It is incredibly easy to sit in the stands at a sporting event, look down at the field, and just completely criticize the players.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone thinks they're an expert from the bleachers.
Right. You've got like a hot dog in one hand, a foam finger on the other, and you are entirely convinced you could have made that pass or, called a much better play.
Yeah, you have all the opinions, but absolutely none of the sweat.
Exactly. And right now, as we look out at the landscape of artificial intelligence, I mean, those stands are absolutely packed. Everyone is shouting.
Everyone has a take.
But very few people are actually down on the field taking the hits. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is specifically designed for you, the listener.
Right. We want to help you break out of those spectator sidelines.
Because we are going to explore why mastering AI is, well, fundamentally different, yet surprisingly similar to how you've learned to use pretty much every other major technology in your life.
It really is the defining challenge of our current moment, isn't it? I mean, the gap between having an opinion on AI and actually having experience with it is just massive.
It's a complete chasm. And that actually brings us to our source material for today, which tackles this exact dynamic.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
I was looking through this freshly published LinkedIn article, dated today, actually, June 27th, 2026, and it's titled, Good News, Bad News. There is only one way to learn about AI's PROs and cons.
And it comes paired with this highly compelling visual slide deck.
It does. And what's really interesting is the context of where this comes from. So these materials make up issue 102 of the One Idea newsletter.
That's One Idea spelled with the number one.
Right, pronounced One Idea. And we should proudly note that it's produced by Trevor Nell.
The author of Confessions of a Serial Entrepreneur.
Yes, and he's also the co-founder of Wisdoms and the Difference Makers in Every City project.
Right.
But, the reason that background really matters is because of who this newsletter is written for.
Right. It completely shifts how you read the material.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not meant for passive doom scrolling. Trevor Nell produces this specifically to provide, idea stimulation and inspiration for participating difference makers.
Yeah, we are talking about a community of people who literally meet for online chats every single Wednesday morning to figure out how to make a tangible impact.
Which means it demands application.
Totally.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Nell mentions he has spent thousands of hours over the last year experimenting with AI. Not just reading futurist blogs, but, actually working alongside the tool.
Real hands-on time.
Yeah. And based on all that experimentation, I want to throw a provocative opening question your way.
Okay, let's hear it.
Based on his findings, is AI actually a technological revolution? Right. Or is it, at its core, just a psychological mirror reflecting our own human intent?
Wow. Well, to answer that, we really have to look at the human element first, which Nell does brilliantly in the sources.
Right.
Over those thousands of hours, he observed this fascinating paradox. Like, almost everyone in the world has formed a hardened opinion on AI. You have people listening to futurists who are convinced this is the singularity, the biggest shift since the printing press.
And then on the other side of the stadium.
Right. On the other side, you have people utterly convinced it's an overhyped, dangerous bubble that just hallucinates and threatens jobs.
But Nell doesn't divide people by whether they think AI is good or bad, does he?
No, not at all. He divides them by their behavior.
The spectator versus the participant.
Exactly. The sources define the spectator as someone completely driven by alarming headlines. They just spend their cognitive energy arguing about the ultimate nature of AI.
And they fear job replacement.
Constantly. And crucially, the loudest, most aggressive opinions almost always come from the people who spend the absolute least amount of time actually using the technology.
It's the equivalent of someone writing a blistering one-star review of a restaurant based entirely on standing on the sidewalk and glaring through the window at the menu.
That is a perfect analogy.
They haven't walked inside. They haven't tasted the soup.
Yeah.
But they have a megaphone, and they want the entire neighborhood to know the soup is terrible.
Right, whereas the participant, the other camp Nell identifies, is driven by curiosity, not fear.
They're the ones inside the restaurant.
Yeah. They're quietly building remarkable things. They leverage AI as a collaborative sounding board, and they just relentlessly refine their questions.
Which brings up Nell's good news, bad news paradigm. Because spectators always demand a binary answer, right? They ask, is AI a good thing or a bad thing?
And Nell's answer is, well, yes, it is both.
Right.
What's fascinating here is the good news is that AI is astonishingly useful. It can produce sheer brilliance. And frankly, if you know how to use it, it makes you look incredibly clever.
And obviously the bad news is if you use it poorly, it wastes your time and makes you look foolish.
Exactly. It spits out utter nonsense.
But the deciding factor isn't some inherent flaw in the AI. It's the user's time spent in the arena. The real question you, the listener, should be asking yourself isn't whether AI has strengths or weaknesses.
Right.
It's whether you've actually spent enough time to discover where those strengths and weaknesses actually are.
Yeah, you cannot map a territory by reading a map drawn by a spectator. You have to walk the ground yourself.
So if our goal is to get you out of the stands and onto that ground, the logical next step is figuring out how we actually learn to navigate this stuff.
Which means looking at history.
Yeah, the sources lay out this historical timeline. The internet, email, digital cameras, GPS, smartphones. Think back to the early internet.
Oh, man.
Nobody became an expert in navigating the web by, sitting in an armchair reading newspaper articles about it.
No, they learned by plugging in that awful screeching dial-up modem, connecting, and getting completely lost.
They clicked on dead links, they broke things, they tried again.
Experience just beat innate genius. The people who understood the early web weren't the ones with the highest IQs. They were simply the people who logged the most hours.
I follow the logic there, but I have to push back on the source material slightly.
Oh.
Getting lost on the early internet is a great comparison, but they bring up things like the digital camera. A digital camera in 2005 didn't upgrade its own lens every Tuesday,
That's true.
right? This is really an apples-to-apples comparison we are making here.
I think the sources anticipate that exact friction, actually, which is why Nell introduces the concept of velocity.
Okay, velocity.
You're right. Past technologies were largely static. You learn them once. But AI introduces a new variable, this compounded, almost daily velocity.
The ground is literally moving while you're trying to walk on it.
Exactly. And because of this velocity, the single biggest mistake a user can make is assuming AI is something you learn just once. Education can never stop, because every prompt reveals a new capability or a new limitation.
But, that velocity comes with a massive side effect. Yeah. Because it changes daily. Early attempts are often going to result in really weird outputs.
And when that happens, people immediately blame the tool.
Yeah. The slide deck touches on this with a metaphor about an iceberg, calling it the prompting surface.
Right. Most users experience path A of an AI failure.
Which is?
They write a vague prompt, assume the AI can somehow read their mind, receive a weird output, and conclude, see, AI is useless.
Let's actually dig into the why behind that failure, because here's where it gets really interesting. Think of prompting an AI like giving instructions to an incredibly brilliant intern who just happens to have severe amnesia.
That is a much more accurate way to look at it.
Right. This intern has read every book in the world, but they don't know who you are, what your company does, or what your tone is.
They have no context.
None. So if you just walk up and say, hey, write a report on sales, they panic. They calculate the statistical probability of a sales report and hand you something totally generic.
And that guess is what we call a hallucination.
Exactly. It's not a glitch. It's the machine trying to fill in the massive gaps of context you left out.
Which brings us to what the sources call Path B, the builder's journey. Path B requires a precise question. You set the context. And most importantly, you review the first answer as a rough draft. You refine and iterate to get dramatically better answers.
And this ties perfectly into Trevor Nell's hammer analogy from the slides.
Oh, I love the hammer analogy.
A hammer can be used to build a beautiful home, or it can be used to break a window. The tool is neutral. The story is entirely about the person swinging it.
It really is.
I mean, blaming AI for a bad output is like blaming the hammer because you smash your own thumb. We focus too much on the intelligence of the machine and completely ignore the intent of the human.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, AI rarely fails the way we think it does. Usually we just ask the wrong questions, or we assume the very first answer must be the best one.
So once you learn to swing the hammer through better questioning, what can you actually build?
The sources outline this in the AI Impact Matrix. It shows 4 distinct areas of real-world utility.
Let's run through them.
First is professional strategy. So career guidance for job seekers, pressure testing interview answers, things like that.
Okay, makes sense.
Then there's small business growth, scaling efficiencies, acting as a fractional executive. Third is everyday utility.
Moving from ordinary to extraordinary in your daily logistics.
Exactly.
Okay, I follow all of that. But the fourth quadrant, I have to ask a skeptical question on behalf of the listener here.
You're looking at the meaning and purpose quadrant.
Yes, meaning and purpose. How does a bunch of code help a regular person solve a global crisis of meaning or find intentional fulfillment? That sounds, well, kind of crazy.
It does sound like an overreach, but this is actually the biggest surprise of all from Trevor Nell's thousands of hours of experimentation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, AI hasn't just taught him about artificial intelligence, it fundamentally taught him about human intelligence.
Wait, unpack that. How?
To get good at AI, a person literally must upgrade their own human communication, curiosity, decision-making, creativity, and patience.
Because the machine doesn't know what you want unless you know what you want.
Exactly. When you try to articulate your life's goals to an AI, you realize how vague your own thinking is. It doesn't give you meaning. It forces you to define it perfectly.
Oh, wow. So listen to this. If you are using AI correctly, you aren't outsourcing your thinking.
Not at all.
Instead, you are actively honing your own communication and questioning skills, forcing yourself to become a clearer, more intentional thinker.
That is exactly the mechanism. It's a mirror.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The sources present what they call the new qualification. You don't need a computer science degree.
You don't need to understand neural networks.
No, the only qualification required is curiosity. The formula is incredibly simple.
One prompt, one experiment, one conversation, every single day.
Every single day, experience is the new AI qualification. So what does this all mean?
Well, Nell's closing argument is that the future won't belong to the people with the strongest, loudest opinions about AI.
As spectators.
Right. It will belong to the builders who quietly become better at using it. Don't let someone else's opinion become your education.
That is so powerful. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds on everything we just discussed.
I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So the sources make a compelling case that AI teaches us patience and communication because we have to carefully refine our prompts to be understood. Right.
Right.
But think about this. If we spend all our time training ourselves to communicate flawlessly with a digital sounding board, a machine that never gets offended, never gets tired, and always adapts to our tone, what happens to our human relationship?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy question.
Will we lose our tolerance for the beautiful, messy friction of human-to-human interaction? Or will AI actually make us better listeners in the real world too? Just something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Now get out of the stands, get into the arena, and try one experiment today.